Hello, it's Martin from Wisely Automotive, and today is a bit of an early start, just past 7 a.m. because I'm taking our Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo for a software update at Porsche Tewkesbury. I need to be there at about 11, so I just need to grab a couple of things from our office and let's get going. I will tell you all the details on the way. The built-in Porsche sat-nav is honestly quite something. I literally just wasted about 3% of the battery going around in circles because it took me through a road which was first closed and then it wanted me to go all the way around London, so under the Roderick Tunnel, and then around London. Pointless. I will try to cut through to the city. Now what I was expecting matches what the nav is saying. Estimated arrival at 11:26 and 4% left in the battery, 122 miles to do. I will reset the trip computer, so here we need to go into this menu, reset trip data and reset trip since reset. Actually, let's reset everything just to be sure. I've got the units set to miles per kilowatt hour, but we can work out what the efficiency will be in other units. I will cross-check with what the charger says when I arrive, because the Taycan is not always the most accurate in terms of the energy usage in the onboard computer. But as you can see, once we get moving, this car is in a bit of a weird software situation, because Taycans originally had a power meter, or a power distribution meter rather, in the instrument cluster, which you could configure, and it would show whether the car is using the front motor or the rear motor on the all-wheel drive drivetrains. Porsche then removed that for some reason, without any explanation as far as I know, but the newer Taycans now have it in the trip information screen as part of the infotainment system. It's pretty interesting to see which motor is powering the wheels, and the same for regen. One of the big new things with this update, and the reason why I'm quite careful about efficiency and how we measure that, is that the car should be more efficient. In the past, the front motor was prioritized in range mode for efficiency, and that made quite a lot of sense, because I believe there is a clutch in the rear motor, so that could disengage completely. These are permanent magnet motors, so they can't really freewheel. And also the rear motor has the added drag of the transmission. Transmission is a lot of gears, in other words, friction losses. And the gear ratio in the second gear on the rear is the same as the gear ratio in the front, about 8:1, I believe, off the top of my head. With the new software, the behavior is different, and you can see even now that the car is prioritizing the rear motor quite a bit and freewheeling on the front. So that's an interesting setup. We will see whether the update changes anything, because as I said, this car is in a bit of a weird spot regarding updates, because we do have the newer infotainment system version with the colorful tiles on the home screen. It's a lot easier to use while you're driving, because it's easy to just glance at the information based on the color, you know what you are looking at. But it seems like some of the drivetrain bits are also very up to date and in line with what this update was meant to bring, even though it was announced after we took delivery of this car. But I will test more of that once I get onto the motorway. I will flick the car into range mode. It's just in range mode the car drops the suspension, and we are going through quite a few speed bumps through these residential roads in London. So I will wait for that and then report back on what the situation is. And it will be very interesting to see whether we see any actual changes with the update, given this is a fairly recent car, it has the colorful infotainment and so on. Don't you worry, the person I'm seeing at Porsche, I will try to extract as many answers from them, because the press release is a little bit vague. So if they had like a technical bulletin with the official changelog, that would be very helpful. Just for the record, before I forget, the reason why we are using Porsche Tewkesbury specifically, which is, as you can see, quite far away, and it really is a trek, and it means a day out of the office for one of us, is because we tried contacting Porsche Central South London, where we purchased this car, and just like before, as we mentioned in our collection video, have a look at that, I believe that in the card above, the team did not get back to us. So they seem to have a very strong sales team, very responsive, all questions answered, but the after sales is definitely lacking. That was the same thing when we were trying to book a Porsche Cayenne in for a £7,000 repair, so definitely would have been money made in that. And now, even though the software update is free, still no reply. So it's a shame because we liked the collection experience, but for better or for worse, the after sales have to follow suit. And once I'm finally moving, the tire pressure warning has come on, so excellent. But I don't know why it's showing it in the instrument cluster, because all the tire pressures look fine in the middle screen. So let's try to reset this. It has been an hour and a half and I still haven't even reached the South Circular, so welcome to London. Yes, the Taycan does need to go into an actual service centre for an update. The reason being that even though it supports over-the-air updates, these are, I believe, only kind of small feature updates, and given the car will need to have quite a few of the ECUs updated, my guess would be that those do not have the over-the-air capability, but Porsche has mentioned in their press release that going forward this update will enable more things to be controlled over the air. So hopefully it means that this is an opportunity for Porsche to kind of improve the software to the point where it can receive over-the-air updates going forward, and also you will be able to unlock some additional features, because for example all Taycans have the hardware for comfort access, but now you will be able to unlock that feature post-purchase through the My Porsche app. Before I join the South Circular, let me configure the range mode. So that's all done under this menu. And we will do maximum speed, let's do 70 miles per hour, the national speed limit. So I can drive in range mode and see whether the motors behave differently at all. By the way, I do have the regen mode enabled. There's a shortcut for that right on the steering wheel, but the regen is not very strong in the Taycan at all, so it still very much prefers coasting. And you don't get anything close to one-pedal driving. The only thing which kind of helps is hold mode, I suppose, because if I'm stopped like this, I can press the brake pedal deeper and the car holds the brakes for me, and I don't have to keep my foot on the brake pedal. I'm making progress above 30 miles per hour for the first time. Yay! I think the M4 was closed this morning, hence why the sat-nav took me all the way around and all the traffic on the way. But at least hopefully it should flow from now on. The only problem is that now I'm running a bit late. So I have no time to hang about. I will stick to the speed limit, and yeah, with a bit of luck I will arrive just with enough range left to test out the rapid charging. I can go back to the motor information and let's see. So now I'm still in comfort, but it's only using the rear to hold 40 miles per hour. And I've got a section where I can accelerate to 70. So that's the end of the 40 zone and up to 70. Let's see. Yes, both motors engage. And if I kind of keep 65, even at 65 miles per hour, it only uses the rear one. This is very interesting, and I will try to get some more information about it. And let's see, if I set it to range mode, it automatically drops down. But yeah, no change really. Still only using the rear. What about sport? Yeah, both motors. Even though I'm holding the same speed in sport, it automatically engages both. Excellent. So range mode. Adaptive cruise on, and let the car do the driving. Really like the instruments. No wonder Arthur loves the Taycan. It's very refined, even with the big 21-inch wheels. So low profile tires, very wide tires on the back, but very nice and quiet. And the suspension is just tuned beautifully. Glides over bumps, superbly smooth, yet very responsive. Well done. I mean, it makes sense. Porsche knows how to do these things. I can also show you now that still in range mode, but I've got the regen setting off. And you can see that on the graphic that the moment I stop touching the accelerator and the brake, both motors are decoupled from the drivetrain and the car should be coasting with minimal losses. And yeah, I'm losing barely any speed. Obviously there is still friction and aerodynamic drag, but overall shows how refined the system is. If I swipe into the trip computer, the overall efficiency is now approaching 3 miles per kilowatt hour. So considering the tire size, the wheel size, and the overall shape and power of the car, I think that's pretty decent. Obviously something like the i3 would do 4 or maybe even 4 miles per kilowatt hour even in this cold weather, but you know, you have to be realistic, this is a completely different kind of a car. I have now updated the destination in the navigation system. Instead of just putting in the Porsche as a dealership or point of interest, I specifically chose the charging station, so the car should have the battery hopefully preheated accordingly. Even without any preheating, we are still about 40 miles away and the battery is already at 32 degrees Celsius, so we hopefully achieve the peak charging rate for a quick 30-minute charge. Let's see the handling. Oh, I like this. But even though I did not floor the accelerator, at that point I'm fairly sure I heard the transmission in the back downshift into first gear for maximum torque. So got my first low range warning at 15%, but still only have 24 miles to the destination, 6% expected. So pressing on. 33 degrees in the battery now. Well, nothing is going to plan today. The Taycan is going to be dropped off. That's just beside me. I'm in the loan car, which is a BMW 420i convertible. Will be interesting to see how it feels going back to petrol. I tried charging the Taycan and doing the charging test. A little bit of a problem. I think they're doing some kind of maintenance on the chargers. So the charging power peaked at about 160 kilowatts. I will put it down to the chargers for now because we have seen the car charge at over 200 kilowatts easily, despite the battery being at over 30 degrees Celsius. And I made sure to disable the lower power charging option in the menu, but at least we know how many kilowatt hours it took to achieve a certain percentage increase, so we can then try to work out the same thing after the charging update. I know if we wanted to do it properly, we would run the car all the way to 0 and then charge very slowly to 100% to minimize heat loss, but this is the real world, so we don't have the time to do that, and we will see whether there's any difference in the net battery capacity. Other than that, I will see you in a couple of days' time. The software update takes about 4 hours, I was told, but I will be picking the car up in a couple of days' time again. So, see you then. It's the Friday now, and I'm back at Tewkesbury with the 4 Series. So, what do I think of driving a petrol after driving electric for 5 years? Well, I was pleasantly surprised by how efficient the car is. It has a 2-litre petrol engine, rear-wheel drive only, with the 8-speed automatic gearbox. The gearbox is smooth by combustion engine standards, but obviously it's nowhere near close to an EV, especially at low speeds. But yeah, I had to refuel twice because of the very confusing system for me as a mainland European boy, where we measure consumption in miles per gallon but refuel in liters, but whatever. I think I used about 30 liters in total. I will try to work out what that was in terms of cost, because I averaged right around 50 miles per gallon for both journeys, which, as I said, I would say is quite good. Obviously, even combustion engine cars are quite sophisticated now. The start-stop system in particular is quite well done. It knows, for example, whether a vehicle ahead is about to start moving and then automatically kicks the engine on before you lift the foot of the brake pedal. Or likewise, if you're about to enter a roundabout, it keeps the engine on. So you've got full power when you need it. But speaking of full power, yes, even though on paper the 0 to 60 is quite respectable, because of that gearbox and turbo lag, it really cannot match something like even a BMW i3 when merging onto motorways or darting into traffic. But that's enough of the 4 Series. I'm very glad I had a courtesy car from Porsche and I did not have to use public transport because it's quite difficult to get back to London from here. But let's get back to a proper car now. Back in the Taycan now, so let's go through what's different. At the first glance, not much has changed. It's still the same tired layout. I've got the same instruments available in the curved display, but I have already started setting up a few things. First of all, the navigation. I am going to charge at Beaconsfield at IONITY. I've made sure to specifically select the charger as the destination, so hopefully the car will be able to precondition and we will get full speed. The user interface already when I was putting the destination in was a bit different, and it gives you a bit more information in terms of whether you can use full air conditioning and still make it to the destination and so on. And it's currently estimating 27% on arrival based on driving in standard mode. And I'm afraid there will be some traffic along the way, as it's usually the case. Secondly, I have reset the trip computer and I've set the units to miles per kilowatt hour. So we will see how that goes. As I mentioned before, we can't really compare it with the previous trip because the conditions are very different, especially now it's raining with the big wheels. I think it's going to make some impact on the driving range, but we will see. And at least we will be able to monitor the graphic showing which motors are active and see whether they behave any differently compared to before. And lastly, what I want to do is go into settings, because one of the features of this update is that the plug-in charge with IONITY should be a bit more refined. So battery saving fast charging I will keep off, because we want to see whether the preheating makes any difference in terms of the peak performance. And if I enable this, oh, is that it? Well, that was quite simple. And let's see whether that works. The theory is that the Taycan will now behave just like a Tesla, and the moment you plug in, the charging will start automatically and you don't have to fumble with cards or apps or anything like that. As I'm about to set off, I will get Arthur to activate a couple of things on the Taycan. Given this example is equipped with the adaptive cruise control, you can also purchase Porsche InnoDrive and the lane keeping as separate add-ons through the online portal, or you can have them as a subscription. So we will try the free trial and I will make a separate video covering how that handles in real-world traffic scenarios with rain and less than perfect conditions. But enough talking, it's 3 p.m. so we need to get going. Arrived at Beaconsfield, 19% left, so as expected because of the rain, quite a bit slower. And that's before taking into account that we were traveling not at the national speed limit all the time because there was a lot of traffic. By the way, just for the record, the efficiency on the 89-mile stretch has been 45.8 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. Again, I will put what that is in different units down on the screen with the average speed of 45 miles per hour, 2 hours of driving time. No need to turn the car off, this is like a Tesla, the moment you jump out it goes to sleep. After the world's longest handshake I was starting to get a bit skeptical, but in the end the Taycan did get there, established connection with the charger. I did not need to do anything, I didn't have my phone out, literally just plugged in, and after about a couple of minutes the charging process started. Now, of course, to go with the theme of ruining the tests in this video, a pop-up came up briefly in the instrument cluster saying that the charging power is reduced due to the load on the infrastructure. It seems like there are quite a few stalls active and there is another Taycan over there. And if they are power sharing, not all chargers can supply full power. But anyways, charging power jumped right up to 200 and something kilowatts. I've only been here for a while and I'm already at 40%. This is amazing, and it's still sustaining 206 kilowatts, so nice and flat charging curve. You can literally see the Taycan steaming outside, but this is the standard and how it should work. There's still a bit of room for improvement, for example getting the handshake times down. It was the same at the Porsche charger. It took about 2 minutes to do the full handshake, but look, can't really complain with this type of sustained power. Chaos happening here at IONITY, so let's set the sat-nav. Navigate to Wisely Automotive.
One moment please, your entry is still being processed. Would you like to start route guidance to Newmarket Wesley Bottom Road?
Navigate to SE162DB.
Would you like to start route guidance to Jarrow Eskdale Drive?
No. Voice control by legacy automakers. Let's do it manually then.
The route is being calculated.
as you could hopefully hear, I turned on the Porsche electric sport sound to make my journey to London through all the traffic a bit more interesting. Regarding the drivetrain post-update, it's difficult to quantify how much more it's using the rear motor without a side-by-side test. Maybe it's just in my mind, but I would say even upon more significant accelerator inputs, the front unit stays decoupled, which was not the case before the update. So despite the car already having had the rear-wheel drive bias on the software out of the factory, refinements have been made. If you're wondering what it means for traction, you don't have to worry. Even in the heavy rain, the car has not struggled for grip and there wasn't a moment of hesitation. From the driver's perspective, it feels pretty much identical to the previous Taycans. At this point, the only thing left to do is turn on the adaptive cruise control and enjoy the rest of the journey. Weeks have passed since we filmed the video, I edited all the bits, and now it's time to make a conclusion about the findings, so let's go through it with my notes on the iPad. Firstly, as I just mentioned in the last section on the way home, I think the drivetrain has been further refined, and it's nice to see that Porsche is still investing their time and effort into refining the drivetrain system. Regarding the battery capacity, those tests were a little bit flawed, because at the first charging session the charging speed was much slower, so the cooling requirements would have been different and so on. And even if I look at the numbers from the IONITY session, I went from 18 to 79%, which equals about 57 kilowatt hours delivered. So if we extrapolate that to 100%, that would be about 93.4 kilowatt hours. And that's in fact the battery pack gross capacity, so it would mean absolutely zero buffer at the top and bottom and no losses. So I'm afraid no useful information to report there, but I thought the charging curve would be interesting. So I plotted out all the data points I had, and unfortunately here is a little bit of a sad truth, and that is that even though the charging power was limited in the beginning, which means the battery did not get as hot as it would have been at a charging station which supports the full 350 kilowatts, the BMS still strictly follows the same charging profile. In other words, it literally just cut off the peak, and there was no change to the sub 200 kilowatt section of the charging curve. That's a little bit disappointing, because had I used the lower power DC rapid charging option in the menu, I would have possibly achieved a faster time to 80% in this occasion. So just something to keep in mind, that the car does not swap those over for you. A little bit of useful news, because I took so long with editing of the video and everything, the EPA has run their tests over in the US on the Taycans for the 2023 model year, and I will leave a spreadsheet with all the different versions on the screen now, but basically the Cross Turismo with the 4S drivetrain seems to have achieved a 6.9% range improvement. So here we have concrete evidence of how much better the range got thanks to the software update. Still does not answer the question of how much of that is down to pure efficiency and whether the buffer sizes have been reduced, because if I look at the numbers about efficiency versus overall range, they still don't quite add up, but I think we just need to leave that for someone else to test. Lastly, I promised you in the beginning of the video that I would try to extract as much information from Porsche as possible, and I managed to obtain the full changelog for the software version, so let's go through the release notes together. There is a lot of bullet points, so what I think I will do, I will just highlight a couple of the important ones, and you can pause the video at any point to read through it in full detail. I've explicitly raised a question with the service advisor whether this is a software update or a recall, and I was told that it's a recall in the form of a software update. So the idea is that there are some crucial bug fixes which need to be pushed out to all Taycans. If I look at the notes, it does add up, because first of the couple of items are relating to the 12-volt battery charging. So in other words, probably the charging logic of the DC to DC converter for the 12 volt. Comfort access now can be later unlocked as an over-the-air purchase. Spotify is now integrated into the infotainment system, and so is Android Auto. In fact, this was available on our Taycan from day one, but unlike CarPlay, it's only a wired connection. The infotainment has the new colorful tiles. The voice control system should be improved. Well, based on my experience, there's still a lot more room for improvement. More filter options when looking for charging stations in the built-in sat-nav system. The all-wheel drive indicator now being integrated into the trip computer in the PCM. Slight tweaks to the curved instrument cluster display and for the head-up display, but our car is not equipped with that, so could not really test that. Basically bug fixes of the driving assistance systems. And to be fair, I really enjoyed the adaptive cruise control, no real bugs or phantom brakes, but the InnoDrive was a bit of a different story, so that will be a separate video linked above. Better signal processing and path planning of the park assist system. Increased diagnostic reliability with external access. Now, it sounds like just a small thing, but if it's what I think it is, it's something similar to Tesla, where more of the onboard systems can be diagnosed remotely by Porsche, so you don't need to visit a service center. Again, one of those things which hopefully you never have to rely on, but it can make your life a lot simpler in case you need to. Optimization of the handling and braking, and that's one of the lovely things about having all software-controlled cars these days, is that they can be tweaked and refined over the years after they have been on the market, and Porsche manages to gather some real-world feedback. So again, good to know that these things are being continually improved. Better drivetrain efficiency, as described by relying on the rear motor more instead of the front motor, and improvements to the noise levels of the electric motors themselves. And here we go into some of the bullet points which highlight that this is really a recall and not just an optional feature update, because if air conditioning is failing, that can really lead to misting of the windscreen, and that's a safety hazard. So at that point, that has to be addressed as a proper recall, because all vehicles have to have that fault rectified, even if it's in the form of a software update. Obviously with Tesla, they do it completely over the air, whereas for this case with the Porsche, it had to go into the service. And yeah, the rest are pretty much software updates and refinements of the entire system to just make sure that it is as slick as possible and there are no longer these weird edge cases which can throw it off. As I suspected, it also brings online update compatibility for various other ECUs, so going forward, hopefully this establishes a good baseline and the future software updates will be available completely over the air without having to go to the service center. I think that's about it. The video has been long as it is, so if you still have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below and we will do our best to answer. Otherwise, as always, thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one.